All right. So, you sent this over to us, and wow, it's quite the document, isn't it? This OREL Project.pdf.
Yeah, it's a long one for
I
sure.
mean, 176 pages.
Yeah, and published last August too.
So
So,
August 15th, 2024, to be exact.
I mean, it's not light reading. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's presented as like a serious final appeal to reason and call for action kind of thing, you know?
Right. It definitely has that very urgent tone to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, like this is important stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And the core idea, I mean, the document kind of centers around this idea that European heritage is like being eroded, right?
Mm.
And within that, there's this proposition for like the only realistic solution, they say, to safeguard our future.
The only realistic solution. Okay.
Yeah.
Oral, who wrote this, they definitely come out of the gate, you know, very strong with this sense of urgency.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, you really get the feeling that they're tired, and I don't know, there's this deep concern there.
Yeah, it's not just academic for them. It's like,
Right.
this is real. This is urgent. This matters.
And you get the impression that they see this publication as, kind of a last chance almost, for different nations to take a good hard look at
It's
things.
a call to action. Yeah.
Yeah, and make a decision about, which path they want to go down.
Yeah, they literally say, publishing this material is giving us all a chance to make a true stand for our countries. So it's like they're, putting it out there and saying, okay, now's the time to decide.
Yeah, it's interesting too because you sent over this video link as well.
Oh, yeah. That's the YouTube video, right?
Yeah, https://youtube.bed3y4p8xy.
Mm-hmm.
And Oral mentions that this video is meant to like complement the document.
Yeah, it's like a companion piece. Yeah.
So there's the really dense written analysis, but then there's also this visual presentation.
Exact.
So okay, our mission, if you choose to accept it today,
Mm-hmm.
is to kind of wade through this pretty massive amount of information.
That's our job. Yeah.
Yeah, and try to pull out, what are the core arguments that Oral's making here?
Yeah.
What are the solutions that they're advocating for?
Mm-hmm.
And really try to get at what are the big anxieties?
Yeah.
What are the worries that are kind of at the root of this whole project?
What are they afraid of, basically? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with like the absolute core of Oral's argument.
Okay, what are they trying to tell us?
Well, it seems like it boils down to a few main things,
Yeah.
okay? The first is they're saying that there's this, destructive process happening right now, and it's targeting European heritage,
Mm-hmm.
and it's serious.
Okay.
Second point is this isn't just like some random unfortunate thing. This is a major threat
Mm-hmm.
to the future, they say.
To the future.
Yeah. And then this is where it gets really interesting. They claim to have the only realistic solution to deal with this threat.
The only realistic solution. That's a big claim, right?
It is a big claim.
So what makes Oral so sure about this?
Well, they really hammer home the importance of the information in this document.
Mm-hmm.
They say it's crucial for people's security,
Right.
and even more so for their very existence. It's not just about history or culture. It's like survival.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And they also suggest that the current world order is leading people down this passive path, where they're not really in control.
Mhm.
It's like a call to wake up and be proactive.
So they're saying this is a serious problem, but also that we have the power to do something about it.
Exactly. And they're saying, here's how, okay.
Okay, so beyond just laying out the issues, Oral makes this very direct call for action.
Yeah, call to arms almost.
Yeah, so what exactly are they asking people to do?
Well, they're asking you, the reader, to really engage with the information they've presented,
Mm-hmm.
to analyze it, think about it, and decide what the right response is.
Yep.
They describe this whole project as a form of appeal for each one of us who can think critically, and are willing to work together to achieve something.
So it's not just for anyone. It's specifically for people who are willing to think for themselves and collaborate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So what is this common goal that Oral is talking about? What do they want people to work towards?
The big goal, they say, is to resist the threats they see coming our way and to challenge the current world order, which they believe is part of the problem.
So they see the current system as part of the problem, not the solution.
Right.
Okay.
And they're really adamant that you need to read and understand this document like fully
Mm-hmm.
to make informed decisions about the future.
So knowledge is power in this case.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
Okay, so given that this document is, as long as it is,
176 pages. Yeah.
how do they want us to approach it? Like, should we just read it cover to cover, or are there parts that are more important than others?
Well, they acknowledge that it's long, But they say it's necessary, to really cover everything.
Mm.
To be comprehensive, but to make it easier,
Mm.
they've included timestamps for the video.
Oh, that's helpful.
So if you're interested in a specific topic, you can jump right to that section.
That's very practical.
Yeah, they know people are busy.
Right.
Now, there's this interesting bit where they talk about an earlier version of the video being like, border politically incorrect and censored.
What do they mean by that?
Well, they say the current version is meant to be more, lasting,
Mm-hmm.
probably meaning they're being more careful about what they say so it doesn't get taken down, you know?
So they're trying to avoid censorship, basically.
Yeah, it seems like they've had some run-ins with that before.
Right.
So it sounds like the topics they're discussing might be pretty controversial.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So let's get into some of the specifics here.
Okay.
What exactly does OREL identify as these big threats to European heritage in the future?
All right. Well, they lay out several threats, and they're all kind of interconnected.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is demographic shift.
Okay.
And they blame this on a couple of things. Aging populations, obviously, and what they call incompetent governments that have these open border immigration policies.
So they're not a fan of open borders.
No, not at all. They see it as a major problem.
Okay.
They say it leads to a smaller workforce, a slower economy, and all sorts of social problems.
Right, but I mean, just to push back a little bit here, some people would argue that immigration can actually be good for the economy, right?
Yeah, for sure. There are arguments on both sides. Some say it helps fill labor shortages and brings in new ideas.
Right.
But OREL's definitely coming at it from a different angle.
Okay, so they're worried about population changes and the effects those changes will have.
Exactly.
What else are they concerned about?
Well, closely tied to that is mass migration.
Okay.
They think it's driven by things like climate change and economic disparities between different parts of the world.
Makes sense.
The worry is that this mass migration could lead to European civilization being pushed out or replaced over time.
That's a pretty stark image.
Yeah. And to support this point, they even bring up Chris Langan.
Oh, the guy with the super high IQ?
Yeah, the one they say has an IQ over 195.
Right.
OREL mentions an interview with him where he warns about the long-term consequences of mass immigration.
Okay, so they're bringing in some pretty heavy hitters to back up their claims.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
What other threats do they talk about?
They also talk about the weakening of traditional social structures,
Like, what do you mean?
like the fact that young people are less likely to get married and have families these days.
Oh,
They see that as a problem that's adding to the demographic challenges.
right. Fewer families, fewer children.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's the threat of economic decline.
Always a popular topic.
Yeah, they say that the current economic system in the West is unhealthy, and it's going to make things worse, both for the population and the economy in general.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, one problem feeds into the other.
Okay, so we've got demographic shifts, mass migration, economic decline, anything else?
Yeah, they're also worried about cultural and societal changes.
Like what?
They're concerned about what happens when you accept different cultural values and norms. They think it could erode European heritage and traditions.
So they're worried about losing a sense of identity.
That's a big part of it, yeah.
Okay.
They mention specific challenges in areas like education. They say shared values are weakening and there's more strain on society because of growing diversity.
Right. But again, some people would argue that diversity can be a good thing, right? It can bring new perspectives and ideas.
Absolutely. There are definitely different ways to look at it.
Right.
But for OREL, diversity seems to be viewed as a threat.
Okay, so they're worried about internal changes within society. Are they also concerned about external forces?
Yeah, they do express concern about the influence of global entities.
Like what kind of entities?
International organizations, political activists, that kind of thing.
Okay.
They suggest that these groups might have agendas that are harmful to national interests and the future of European civilization.
So they see them as working against their goals.
Yeah, but it's interesting because OREL also makes a point at saying that their initiative won't support any existing political party or movement.
Really? So they want to stay independent?
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to create something new and separate from the existing political landscape.
Okay, that's interesting. So after laying out all these threats, what kind of solutions does OREL propose?
They propose a whole bunch of initiatives. It's a lot to take in.
And just to be clear, we're not endorsing any of this ourselves.
Sorry.
We're just explaining what's in the document.
Exactly, we're just reporting the information.
Okay, good. So what's the first solution they offer?
The first one is creating what they call a global system functionality.
What does that even mean?
Well, they describe it as a system that can work even if the current global system keeps functioning. you know?
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to give like-minded groups and individuals in different countries a way to achieve political solutions.
So it's like a parallel system for political action.
Yeah, almost like building a new structure alongside the old one.
Okay, so when they say global system functionality, I mean, are they talking about something like decentralized communication networks or maybe platforms for international collaboration?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely sounds like they're envisioning something along those lines.
Right. Okay, what else do they propose?
Another big one is central bank digital currency, or CBDC for short.
CBDC, right? I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's a hot topic these days.
Yeah.
OREL talks about the possibility of implementing a global or national CBDC, and they even outline some potential features.
Like what?
They mention a high degree of automation, unique identifiers for each digital coin, and the possibility of multi-purpose accounts.
Interesting.
They also touch on the potential implications, like maybe it could reduce financial crime, but also maybe it could give governments more control over people's finances.
Right. There are definitely pros and cons to consider with CBDCs.
For sure, some experts are excited about the potential benefits, like increased efficiency and reduced risk,
Mm-hmm.
but others are worried about privacy and government overreach.
Yeah. It's a complex issue.
It is, and Oral seems to be in favor of exploring it at least.
Okay, so CBDCs are on the table. What else?
Then there's this platform they call Paul Match.
Poll match. Okay.
They describe it as a multi-purpose platform for the future, very ambitious stuff.
Okay.
They actually envision it potentially becoming a control system for the whole planet.
Wow, a control system for the whole planet.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Okay.
The idea is to connect like-minded individuals for all sorts of purposes, finding friends, forming new communities, business partnerships, finding jobs, offering jobs, that kind of thing.
So it's like a global networking platform on steroids.
Yeah, basically. And they even give a website address, paulmatch.com.
Okay, so when they say control system, I mean, what are we talking about here? Are they thinking about a tool for coordinating actions or something even more involved?
It's not entirely clear, but it definitely raises some questions about the intended scope and how it would all work in practice.
All right, okay, so we've got this very ambitious global platform. What about solutions for the economy? Do they propose anything there?
Yeah, they've got this system called TradeTrat, or maybe it's TradeStrat. They're not super clear on the spelling.
TradeTrat. Okay.
Yeah, they see it as essential for businesses in what they call a trade world order.
A trade world order. What's that?
It's not totally clear, but it sounds like they're envisioning a world where trade is even more central to the global economy.
Okay.
And this TradeTrat system, they think it would be like a combination of an online marketplace like Amazon and a private way to exchange value.
So like their own currency or something.
Yeah, maybe a corporate token or something like that.
Interesting.
The idea is to create a foundation for a new economic bloc that could survive if the current system collapses.
So they're thinking about alternatives in case things go south.
Exactly. It's all about preparedness.
Okay, so we got this alternative economic structure. What about more practical stuff? Do they talk about anything like that?
Yeah, they have a couple of more concrete initiatives. One is called TACMAP.
TACMAP, okay.
They describe it as a tactical navigation map application. It's designed for war games, tactical orientation in the field, and planning,
Like a military-grade GPS?
Yeah, sort of. They say it could be useful for all kinds of things, from paintball to private security, even police and fire departments, especially in situations where the internet or GPS might not be working.
So in a disaster scenario or something?
Yeah, exactly, when things get really bad.
Okay, so a tool for navigating uncertain times.
That's the idea.
What else?
They also have this thing called Sentry.
Sentry, okay.
It's described as a non-lethal rifle and launcher system designed for personal and area protection.
So like a less than lethal weapon.
Right.
Okay.
They say it's customizable and effective in various situations, including a post-collapse environment.
So they're really thinking about all kinds of scenarios here.
Yeah, they're preparing for the worst.
Okay, so TACMAP for navigation sentry for protection. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, there's Farmstadt.
Farmstadt, okay.
This one's all about creating self-sufficient farms and the infrastructure to support them, like radio towers, emergency shelters, logistics networks, that kind of thing.
Okay, so like a back to the land kind of movement.
Yeah, but with a focus on technology and preparedness.
Right.
The goal is to ensure the survival and rebuilding of what they call traditional Western civilization.
Okay, so they want to create these resilient communities that can weather any storm.
Exactly.
And they're planning to use the pole match platform to find the right locations for these Farmstadt communities.
Yeah, they see it all as connected.
Wow, so they've got a lot of ideas here.
They do.
What are the main principles and values that seem to be driving all of this?
Well, there are a few that stand out. First, there's this huge emphasis on preserving European heritage and culture, as we've talked about.
Right, that's a major theme.
Yeah, they're very concerned about losing that.
Mm-hmm.
They also believe strongly in the importance of intellectual competence and collective action.
Yeah.
They want people to think critically and work together.
Right, they're not
Okay.
looking for followers, they're looking for collaborator.
Exactly. And
Wow.
then there's this deep concern about where the world is headed and what it means for the future.
Right, they see a lot of threats on the horizon.
Yeah, and they believe that preparedness and self-reliance are essential for dealing with those threats.
So they're not just sitting around complaining, they're trying to do something about it.
Exactly. They're taking action.
Okay, so Orel clearly has some strong opinions about a lot of different global issues.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit more about their views on some of these broader topics?
Sure. Well, they get into a lot of different things in this document.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about trade imbalances, like the U.S.-China trade deficit,
Okay.
and they analyze the global economic system as a whole. They offer their take on demographic trends in various regions and the potential consequences.
Yeah.
They talk about cultural changes and what they see as the challenges of multiculturalism.
Mm.
They even share their thoughts on the nature of political elites and their motivations.
So they're not afraid to tackle some controversial subjects.
Not at all. They're very outspoken.
Okay. And they also talk about the possibility of global conflict and the need for preparedness.
Yeah, they see conflict as a real possibility, and they believe that people need to be ready for it.
So it's a pretty comprehensive worldview that they're presenting here.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
It is. So to wrap things up,
Uh-huh.
what's Orel's main takeaway for the listener?
Mm.
What do they want people to do after reading this document?
Well, they make it clear that this whole project is based on their own research and analysis.
Mm.
And they know that some people might disagree with their conclusions.
Right. It's a controversial topic for sure.
Yeah, but they're putting it out there for people to consider.
Mhm.
And they really want people to think critically about the information they've presented.
Okay.
They urge listeners to form their own informed opinions, to do their own research and come to their own conclusions.
So it's not about blindly following Orel. It's about using their work as a starting point for your own exploration.
Exactly. You get a real sense of personal responsibility from Oral. Like they feel a duty to share this information and try to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And they're inviting others to join them in this effort.
Okay, so just to summarize this OREL project that you shared with us, it's a pretty serious warning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It paints a picture of European heritage under threat from all sides, demographic changes, cultural shifts, all sorts of things.
Yeah, they see a lot of dangers out there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not all doom and gloom.
Right. They also offer a lot of potential solutions.
Exactly. They propose this whole range of initiatives, some of them theoretical, some of them practical,
Mm.
from those global system functionalities and digital currencies to self-sufficiency projects and even tactical tools.
Right, like the TAC map and the Century.
Yeah, exactly.
And they present all of this as a way to address the challenges they see coming our way.
It's their roadmap for the future.
Okay, so Oral's work definitely raises some big questions about the future, and it challenges us to think critically about these complex issues.
It does.
So as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
After diving into this massive document with all its details and proposals, what part of it resonated with you the most?
That's a good question.
Yeah. And maybe even more importantly, what new questions did it spark for you about the future that we're all creating together?
What do you worry about now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
We encourage you to keep exploring these topics on your own and to really think deeply about what all of this means for you.
Keep learning, keep questioning,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And until next time, stay curious.
and stay safe.